Before the video begins, I'd like to ask you all to please do anything you can to help out the people of Palestine, be it through donating, doing your daily clicks, or simply just speaking up about the genocide that they're going through. Any bit of any of these will help out a ton. I'll leave relevant links in the description below. Now onto the video. Welcome viewers, new and old, to the best season of the year, Halloween season. Probably the last one on this channel for a long time, but that's not relevant. And obviously, with Halloween means it's time for a Halloween video. There's plenty of things to make a video on for Halloween, but what better to make a video on than Roblox Horror Games? You know, stuff like Doors, Survive the Night, Apeirophobia, Pressure, you get the gist. But what fun is there in just talking about one game, or even just one type of game? In tonight's video, I'll be talking about good horror games, bad horror games, and some weirder horror games, and seeing what can be learned from them. They can be games I've never shown footage of, or games I've already played. It could be anything as long as it's, you know, horror, or at least horror adjacent. I'll be starting with the good, move on to the bad, and finish with the weird. So, sit down, grab some candy, have your night ruined once you realize half of it is dog shit fucking Twizzlers, and enjoy the show. I'll be beginning the good with a fairly old and quite popular game that most of you have likely heard of at least once before, Identity Fraud. It was released about 8 years ago on January 1st, 2016. It doesn't get much content updates other than things like original soundtrack or level rework, and it's not dead per se, but because it's a complete game, which is fine. The game still gets a good amount of players, so it's never really difficult to find a populated server. It also has a sequel, but nobody ever talks about it, so it doesn't exist. The game's premise is that you awake in a dark, mysterious maze and have to find your way out while avoiding the hostile creatures that lurk within. There is more, probably, but I simply don't care for it. The game has an insanely basic premise for horror game standards, but sets itself apart with its unique monsters and fairly decent horror for its time at least. Wandering around a dark, decrepit maze, desperately trying to look for any semblance of people while standing on your dick 24/7 is bad enough, but once you think you finally found someone and they start floating and chasing you the fuck down, that's when it gets really crazy. Or when you actually manage to find people and they just start walking robotically and waving, even though that joke is old and tired. Except when I do it. When I do it, it's funny. The game offers a pretty good horror experience, especially for something that came out in 2016, and it still has the best player impersonation monster I've seen in a Roblox game. I've still yet to see any other game, except maybe Minus Descendants pull one off half as well. I should state that I don't know how much of this game's content was here day one or added post-release, since I was too busy making FNAF RP videos back in 2016. But for the sake of this video, I'll assume everything is how it was day one, with the exception of Maze 2, since that is very much different from before. The game does a lot of things well, it's still entertaining even today, but it still has its issues that I feel should have been addressed at some point. The game only having a few levels is fine, but the boss at the end really just does not fit with the rest of the game. Also, waiting for the gate till Maze 2 to open is annoying, especially if Ralph decides to be really funny to camp the door. And there's way too much downtime with not enough uptime. Often, whenever I join, I spend like 5 to 10 minutes just wandering, aimlessly hoping to find the exit door. Despite the game's flaws though, I'd still say it's pretty good, and it shows that having a game with its own unique style and identity, that wasn't a pun, shut up, can go a long way in making a Roblox game be something more than flavor of the week slop that gets forgotten as soon as the next flavor of the week slop gets made. But what about something more modern? After all, Identity Fraud is an over 8-year-old game. Well, that's where Apeirophobia comes in. Apeirophobia is probably the one game in this video that's been featured the most on this channel, since I've made 3 whole videos dedicated to it. However, I've never actually given my thoughts and opinions on it, it's just been me going through the game. So what better time than now to finally talk about it? Since not everyone is caught up with a dying 1,000 sub Roblox YouTuber, allow me to catch everyone up on what Apeirophobia is. Apeirophobia is a horror game where you accidentally no-clip into the Backrooms while filming with friends, or something, I don't know. Forcing you to navigate through near endless rooms while avoiding monsters and completing puzzles with nothing but a camera, your wits, and a few other people if you decide to play multiplayer. Most levels will have an entity hunting you down, but sometimes there will be rooms where you're free to just explore or do a puzzle. Or a puzzle. What sets Apeirophobia apart from the rest of the many Backrooms games is its insanely high quality. I'd go as far as to say it's better than the vast majority of Backrooms games on Steam that you buy with like money and stuff. It's most certainly better than 99.9% of Roblox Backrooms games I see. I know some may disagree, but I know we can both agree that it certainly clears this shit. Apeirophobia has its flaws, like some cheap jump scares as well as some boring, annoying, or straight bullshit levels. No, level 11 is not one of them. The parkour isn't hard, you guys are just bad. Or on mobile. In that case, I'm sorry for your handicap. One thing I'm really glad Apeirophobia doesn't do is stick to the canon of the main Backrooms universe with almond water and the 2 billion levels and all the other shit that was probably written by a 14-year-old. It doesn't take place in Kane Pixel's Backrooms universe either, aka the actually good one. It just takes elements from these two and merges them into something of its own, which allows it to take the good things from the shitty verse and the good things of Kane's verse and turn them into something new. Apeirophobia is kind of lacking in the story department. It has lore, probably, but that's not story. It really just boils down to will I escape and what is this place? Though, at the beginning of chapter 2, things do start to get slightly interesting, which I won't spoil here. The game has some pretty good monster designs here and there, though it often falls into the trap of having nearly all of its monsters just being all black with a bit of white thrown in, which is so overdone in horror designs you don't even know. But the Keeper, Partygoers, and those weird Jack-in-the-Box things are pretty alright. But none of them compared to the old Skin Stealer. I miss Joseph. The game tries its best to have entities be different from one another by having differing gameplay mechanics, like having an SCP-173 type monster that teleports behind you if you stare at it for too long, or one that's invisible most of the time and forces you to duck into side rooms, or one you can't have 4 pictures of on your screen or it annoys you to death. They try to spice up the gameplay so it isn't all run from bad guy if it sees you, some better than others, which I like, even if none of them have particularly interesting mechanics from what I recall. With all that said, Apeirophobia is a really well-made Backrooms game. I recommend getting some friends on and just going through. It is one of the games that actually deserve to blow up. Granted, it didn't reach the same heights anymore now that the Backrooms has become less relevant. Who knew a well-made, scary game based off a popular thing would do so well? Anyways, what if you're looking for less horror and more really fun? Well, that's where Hunting Season Rebirth enters the picture. The name Hunting Season may sound a bit familiar to some of you, and that's because it's the name of a Roblox horror game that was fairly popular back in 2021, but was eventually discontinued. I never played very much of it, so I can't go in depth about how it was, but it was pretty well made from what I played, and quite a bit scary. You ran around an open map and collected these night crawlers while avoiding eldritch abominations invented by the hubris and greed of man. Now, enter Hunting Season Rebirth, a remake of the aforementioned game. That's right, over a year ago it got remade. Now it's made way more clear that you're meant to actually fight the creatures. The game isn't very complicated. You're dropped into a large open map and given a certain amount of time to collect items and weapons before one of 5 terrifying creatures known as crawlers spawn in and begin hunting you down. Your goal is to kill those crawlers with whatever you can find, except for rescue. You can win rescue without attacking the crawlers once, but that doesn't count because that mode is boring. Now, crawlers are basically just boss fights, though do be warned, there's something other than a crawler that also wants you dead. The game has 4 maps and 4 modes, those being Quarry, Town, Viewpoint, and Lair for the maps, and the Hunt, Biorush, Rescue, and Hardcore Hunt for the modes. I won't bother spending my time talking about these in depth. The replayability of Hunting Season comes from unlocking all of the skins, perks, and badges. Some badges can be a little annoying to get, like Veteran or Godlike, but it's an overall fun experience. I think this game is less horror and more scary theme. I mean, the game doesn't really scare me often, except for when an exo-crawler comes out of nowhere or when you're all alone in the middle of nowhere with a flashlight that's almost out of battery, a weapon that barely does any damage, a single medkit, 32 HP while all of your teammates are dead or across the map, and there's 3 minutes left on the timer before you all die and lose the mission. But those are rare. Seems fun, right? Well, sadly, this game suffers from a few major issues that keep it from having a good amount of players. And one of the first is the game really not having that much content. 4 maps, 4 modes, a bunch of achievements, and 20 levels worth of perks and skins was enough to keep me playing for 20 hours, but a regular player probably wouldn't care enough about that stuff and just go back to playing the Slop. I think this game could use another simple mode that can be jumped into like the Hunt, since Biorush and Hardcore Hunt feel less like more modes and more like the higher difficulties. The game could use a mode that changes up the gameplay and doesn't take too long. Rescue was too boring and Evacuation was, well, removed for a reason. One of the ideas I came up with was a mode like the Hunt, except you spawn into a map that already has a crawler running around, forcing you to stealth. After a certain amount of time, stealth will stop being an option and you'll have to fight. I think that would be a lot of fun and have a lot of tense moments. Another mode idea is an endless mode, which is basically just Biorush but endless. My idea is that it'd be a non-essential mode, meaning it's not required for 100% because it'd be really boring having to survive something like 10, 20, or 50 waves to get 100%. Second, the game is way too hard for the default Roblox player to wrap their head around. You're just kinda dropped straight into an open map with no idea what you're up against. Mix that with Roblox players' short attention spans and they quit the game before they even got halfway to the good part. Lastly, the updates this game gets, or got, are quite small. It got a few minor yet semi-frequent updates back in August of 2023, but since then there hasn't really been anything. There was the Zero update, which was before I started playing, which added Zero, and I guess there was an update that added Viewpoint 2, which was when I was playing, and I'm pretty sure Biorush was also added in an update. While these additions were cool and did add to the game, they were just too little. They're really just one alright sized addition rather than something big that would make a player come back to the game. The only real exception to this being like Biorush, I guess. I didn't even mention the fact that the developer of this game, Sort of Thief Studios, has a bad habit of making really good and fun games and then leaving them to die after like a month or two of updates. Did you know that Boss Blitz, another game of theirs where you fight Terraria bosses, hasn't really moved at all since its Christmas update? The only thing they did was revert the lobby. You still fight the event boss though, I'm unsure if he still drops his exclusive stuff. Sort of Thief Studios also made Parasite, which blew up for a bit before also kinda dying, and is working on Hoplite. Both games I really don't care for that much. On the bright side of all this, Hunting Season Rebirth is still a lot of fun solo, as its main source of replayability comes from getting the badges and getting all the stuff. But once you do that, there's not much reason to keep playing. At all. Hunting Season Rebirth shows that even a great game that's a lot of fun can fall to the wayside when there's just not enough to keep people coming back. That's enough positivity, happiness, and good stuff. It's about time that we got on to the bad. Which I'll begin by talking about the Mimic. Some of you may be a bit surprised at this, but wait a minute, the Mimic is a good game. And it is. But my problem doesn't lie with the Mimic itself. Yeah, it has some cheap jump scares here and there, and it's really janky in a lot of the areas early game, but it had a really unique theme and pretty decent horror. And, of course, Roblox players ate it up. And then the game blew up. My problem lies in what happens when it blew up, which isn't the fault of a creator whatsoever. We all know what it means. Copycats appear, and that's where the bad begins. I'll start off the bad of Roblox Horror by talking about all of the repetitive episodic / chapter based horror games. I've played so many of these games with friends out of sheer boredom, and basically all of them are the exact same. I have a bunch of faint memories from a bunch of these games, but I can't remember a single one of their names. They absolutely flooded Roblox Horror back during 2023. Some of you may say that I'm kind of cheating by lumping all these chapter based horror games into one, but if you decided to play as much of them as I have, you'd agree with this as well. They all have the same lobby, the same key finding, run from monster gameplay loop, the same scares. Some of them are pretty funny with how bad they are, for example Valley, which is just a generic chapter horror game until it randomly has Figure from Doors, which made me absolutely laugh my ass off when it first happened. And also I think something else that fits here well is those The X Experience games that blew up a while back, as they're all just as repetitive and formulaic as these chapter based horror games. It's not like the Mimic invented chapter-based horror games or anything, but I don't have the tiniest shred of doubt that the Mimic's extreme popularity is what caused this craze to start popping up. It's like the One Piece and the Great Pirate era, except instead of cool awesome pirates, it's just mediocre Roblox horror games. Even if some of these games are actually good, if they all have the exact same code of pain and follow the exact same formula with little deviation, then they'll just fuse into one big gray sludge of generic horror games and they won't be remembered a year after release. A select few are actually kinda good, like Frigid Dusk, but for every Frigid Dusk, there's a Judy and 3 Valors. It's not like you gotta reinvent the wheel, but just making something with genuinely unique presentation will make your game stand out. Though, just because something is, well, I can't really call it unique, but popular doesn't mean it's really quality either, and that's where Rainbow Friends comes in. You know Rainbow Friends, I know Rainbow Friends, we've all heard of this game, we've all seen it. But for the sake of this video, I'll still act like you don't know what it is. Rainbow Friends is a horror game where you and a bunch of people are on a bus to a fun amusement park, but a mysterious individual instead leads your bus to Oddworld, trapping you there with the numerous killer characters? I don't really know if they're living creatures that bleed or robots. Either way, you gotta escape somehow. To do that, you do nothing but fetch quests where you run around the map looking for items so that you can move on to the next part of the game, which is probably another fetch quest. Each time you collect all of the items in your fun fetch quest, a new character is added for you to deal with, though most of them you can really just hide in a box. Repeat until game is over. The game has basically zero elements of actual horror. There's literally nothing in this game that can scare you. The gameplay basically never changes from being a fetch quest filled with monsters that are pitifully easy to avoid, and the game is just so bland. Like, not a single thing here feels like it has been done before. And nothing here feels like it was done in a unique way, but it still became one of the largest games on Roblox for a bit, and it still gets a lot of players because of fucking course. I'd much rather take this over the 20 million copy-paste horror games, but this really isn't that much of a step up. Just because something has a ton of players doesn't mean it's worth playing for more than 15 minutes. Anyways, please ignore the fact that I've beaten this game 3 times. That was a really dark time in my life, and by that I mean I was really bored for a week and played it a few times. That's enough of that though. On to the last game of the bad. So, you remember how I mentioned other Backrooms games on Roblox when I was talking about Apeirophobia and how it's certainly better than some other Roblox games? I mean, you were listening, right? Well, this is that some Roblox games, because the last game of the bad is Shrek in the Backrooms. Hooray. Its premise is simple. You're in the Backrooms for whatever reason, and there's Shrek along with the occasional generic monster. Now, normally I would have just went on about how modern Roblox bad, like the philosopher I am. But after getting more footage for this game, I think this game is worth playing just because of how fucking stupid it is. On the surface it looks like sludge, and it is. It's sludge, but it's really fucking funny sometimes, to the point where I had to rewrite and re-record this after getting some extra footage. A lot of the levels are just plain ass, along with the UI. It all looks like free models and shit I've probably seen before. The only saving grace of the UI is the ability to hide it with the YouTube mode setting. The gameplay is just straight up boring, except for maybe like one section, which I'll talk about in a bit. And there's some levels that are just straight up luck, which isn't fun. On the topic of levels, there's this clown level with the shitty jump scares, and this weird one where you gotta hack computers while this incredibly slow and weird looking Shrek is after you. He kinda looks like the old Skin Stealer. I miss him. The one unique this game does have is traps. Being fucking ridiculous isn't unique, a ton of games already do that. Play No More Heroes free. Some levels have traps littered around the map, which will allow you to trap entities, which I recommend doing, because it's really fucking funny. It's not really that practical, but it's funny, and that's what matters. In fact, a lot of this game is funny, specifically fun to laugh at. It almost made me consider putting it into the weird, but it's so slop regardless of if it's fun to laugh at or not. A few notable things include this level where you go through these, like, tunnels you see at McDonald's play places, and there's this shitty Ronald McDonald clown jump scare that I managed to miss all 3 times it happened. I just had to bring it up again because it's so funny how all of them missed. There's also 2 levels back to back that are very similar to levels 11 and 6 from Apeirophobia, including a fucking Shrek smiler for the Run For Your Life level. It's actually quite an improvement over the one from Apeirophobia since it's way quieter and actually a bit shorter, I think. There's this vent level that actually tried to be scary. It failed, but I still respect them for trying. No, I don't. I'm lying. Also, for some reason, the monster uses an edited version of the Michael P. scream. You know the one. And last but not least is this ridiculous ass level with fucking Shrek Bob. It actually took me the most tries to complete because I couldn't figure out what I had to do initially, since I didn't notice you had to close and barricade the door at first. I was considering complimenting the level for actually being a kind of fun and somewhat unique puzzle until I literally completed it but still died because this level was made over the course of like a day, maybe at most. And that's all I have to say about Shrek and the— oh, there's also Iron Lung. And that's the last I have to say about this game. With all of that, we move on to the lesson? Huh? Oh, well, what are you talking about? We don't do that here. There's never any, like, point to this video or any— hurry up, hurry up! It's no secret that there's a lot of strange games on Roblox, either because they had strange circumstances around them, or they're simply plain weird, or that it's so unusual that I honestly believe that if any higher beings weren't involved in a Roblox game, it'd be that one. Whatever it is, I believe this game, or these types of games, fall into all of these, except the last one. Only R2D8 holds that title. And that is Survival with the X the Killer games. I believe it started with some generic Slop game a few years back called Survival the Jeff the Killer that was covered by a certain popular YouTuber. Me, of course. It's me. Why wouldn't it be me? Obviously it's me. Which spun into several people making their own ironic copies of it. That sounds fine and all until you realize that in present day, it just got taken over by Slop games that have a bunch of free models and useless game passes that function just enough so that they don't get sued. Even though it was just a bunch of Slop games, which I already covered enough in the bad, I put these games in the weird because, well, they're a bit of a weird case, and also the games are just plain strange. Like, why do so many little kids play this? Legitimately, what's the appeal? At least when I was a dumbass little kid, I played some, like, good Slop. I'm going off topic. It went from being dominated by Slop to irony to Slop again. Or in other words, it went from dog shit to dog shit to dog shit. Sadly, most of the interesting ones I found during last year's unfinished rendition of this video seem to have disappeared off the face of the planet. Same with all of the ironic ones as well. At least I think. It's all just more Roblox sludge. It's strange how a subgenre of Roblox games started off as regular sludge, then turned into a parody of the sludge on Roblox, before getting turned back into sludge. It's like a cruel parody of a parody, and even though they weren't really funny for more than like 20 minutes when they were actually trying to be funny, it's still a little sad to see this get turned into yet another subgenre of iPad kid slop. It'd be nice if someone just made a game to count all these repetitive games that have been flooding the Roblox platform, especially the horror scene. Oh wait. Frontpage horror game. Yeah, I bet you didn't expect to see any actual horror games for the weird. Because you're right, there is no actual horror games here. Anyways, Frontpage Horror Game is a, well, horror game that makes fun of and calls out the current state of Roblox horror games and the YouTubers that put eyes on them while still being mostly respectful. And as someone who's played a lot of shitty Roblox horror games, I feel like this game only really scratched the surface. The premise of the game is that every adult is forced to work a full 24 hours a day, so now robots replace the role of parenting. They tell you the story of some random ass mime who broke their spine and crawled into the well in hopes of, like, doing something about it. They then get angry at you for not falling asleep immediately after the story and command grab your ass into some other realm or something, thus putting you in the scariest place of all, generic horror forest. There really isn't a lot to talk about with the game, so I suggest just playing it yourself, though there are a few moments that I found quite humorous, such as when getting the first mask, you're met with this massive map, but all you gotta do is walk down a straight line, which reminds me of that level from the Backrooms All-Seeing, available now on Rec Room. There's also this silly little Gwaggle guarding the second mask, and one of my personal favorites. Early on in the game, you'll see the creator of the Mimic getting femur broken for the heinous crime of creating the Mimic and thus causing this infestation of shitty Roblox games. It's pretty funny. There's other funny stuff too, but that's it. I won't bother summarizing anymore because this video is a bunch of mini reviews, not many summaries. The game is quite short, being able to be beaten in less than 20 minutes even if you get stuck wandering. And even though the game is unfathomably short, I think it's worth playing. And the reason this game isn't in the good is simply just because it fits so much better here. Although I think this game deserves much more recognition and attention, the games in the good needed and deserved it more. Now, on to the last game of the weird, and by extension this video. Drumroll please. I said, there we go. Escape Animal Head. Now, this game is for those who are truly sophisticated, requiring a high IQ and knowledge of the political climate to truly enjoy. It is only for those of prestige, despite it being accessible to all. Those who are unintelligent will simply see it as a shitty, ironic horror game, while us, who have been sharpening our minds all our lives, will see the masterpiece this game truly is. Dude, I'm saying this shit in an apartment complex at 11 PM. It starts off as a simple, unassuming maze game with a comedically large gorilla head with red eyes. Quite humorous if I do say so myself, similar to a Humorous Happenings V, The Humor Must Happen, available on YouTube. It soon moves on to adding obby-esque sections. Truly amazing. It slowly eases the unassuming player into its complex and deep gameplay loop, with various things such as 2D sections and this one part where you go really fast. And it tops itself off with a spectacular boss fight. Truly splendid. Even though it has short length and a minuscule amount of content, its short length actually makes it very replayable. I give this game a 1983 out of 761. The highest score I, Nicholas Voltage, can bestow upon a game. I wish all Roblox games were as great as this. Truly exquisite. Anyways, now that I covered the last of the games, it's time to begin wrapping all of this up. I hope you all enjoyed hearing about some good, bad, and strange Roblox horror games. And maybe I put you on something you actually had a ton of fun playing. Or maybe you had to suffer through Shrek in the Backrooms like me. Whatever it is, leave it in the comments below so I can get more engagement, please. Even though I'm quitting this channel, please give me engagement. Give me engagement. I want it. And with that, happy Halloween if I manage to get this out in fucking October for once. I refuse to delay this another year. I already made this video once before. Oh, and watch Humorous Happenings V. Watch it now. I worked so hard to breathe.
It's